sophisticated that you could work. Oh, okay, sorry. For being so sophisticated that you could work out what UTC is and how it relates to wherever you are in the world. For one, you're better than me. I had to get help from Felipe. Anyway, thank you for coming. We're delighted to have you here. As Felipe said, I'm taking over from our esteemed colleague Richard Goff as the chief editor or general editor or something of performance research at some point in the not too distant future. And Felipe has taken over from me as the manager of the associate editor group. We're very, very delighted to have this first launch. We know that it's a first launch, so we'd like feedback on how are we doing it, and if there's anything you think we could do better, we'd love to hear it. There is something I need to point out though. I'm Helena and I have red hair, and Helen, who is the boss, the real boss of everything, is Helen, and she has red hair, and people often get us confused. But we do work very well together, and we can overcome the confusion and share things between ourselves. Yeah, we're just really happy to have you here, and we're delighted to trial this online launch, and we look forward to having a chat about each of the issues that we're going to discuss tonight. And I'll hand on to Andre now.
Yes, thank you also from my side, and sorry also for the confusion with this time zones. We were also, as we were doing it for the first time, we were also a bit uncertain which time is the real time. So yeah, sorry for that confusion. I would like to start maybe by saying that I had a big privilege to have the issues in print, and thanks to Helen, who was able to send it to me to my Berlin address. And while reading and preparing for today, I realized that there are so many interesting overlappings and crossings. So I would be very happy to actually instigate this sort of discussion where we would see where do these issues intersect, and what do they tell us about the current aesthetic but also socio-political reality of our times. The plan was to start with Christel and Eylül, but as I can see that they are not here at the moment, I would suggest that we start with Mischa and with the issue on the repertoire. So Mischa, if you are okay with it, you can start in a second. Just I will introduce you very, very briefly. Mischa Twitchin is a senior lecturer at Goldsmiths University. He wrote a beautiful book on the theater of death, which analyzes the work of Tadeusz Kantor and Abi Warburg, and asking about a possible iconology of actors. And at the same time, he edited a volume on Wittgenstein and performance. And On Repertoire opens up the whole debate how to overcome the dichotomy between archives and repertoire, and asking also questions about embodied knowledge, intercultural and intergenerational knowledge. So, Mischa, very happy to have you here, and the floor or the screen is yours.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you also, well, especially to Helen for all of the incredible work in supporting making the issue possible. And Richard and everybody else, of course. It might be that the other participants think it's starting in an hour's time. I thought it was a bit later than it turned out to be myself. Well, apologies in advance. I'm simply going to read some about 2 minutes worth of notes, which is completely alienating and inappropriate for this sort of event, but I did wonder whether there would be a screenshot of the cover, which again I have to say is beautifully done, and if you have the hard copy, we decided to put the two. So Angers' version is out of focus, which is wonderful.
Yes.
But the but the two sets of artists' pages are in color in the print copy. Obviously, online it's all in color, but it makes a very nice format to the issue. I'm very grateful for that. So with the apologies, as the themes of performance research ever expand, diagrams, carceral shifts, breath, and so many others, repertoire might seem an old-fashioned issue. One of those pale, stale, patriarchal, elitist claims to making theatre great again. Transgression, resistance. Repertoire is, for instance, a mode of knowledge, both inter- and transgenerational transmission, which is at the heart of civil society or subculture, not to mention secret societies. Perhaps there are members of secret society. Maybe the associate editors are a kind of secret society in this context. Repertoire concerns the ethics of and for research, performance research, as one of those innumerable modes of the silent and, of, or between the terms performance research. I hadn't appreciated, for instance, how much Diana Taylor point of reference until I proposed the topic, and her name seemed for many of the virtually.
Can we, Mischa,
Yeah,
you're breaking up a lot.
I can hear you.
Yeah, we're all finding it a bit hard to follow. Can you maybe turn off your screen? Might that help? Sorry.
You seem to be disconnected, or
Hopefully.
Yeah, that should work.
I hear you all. What then is contemporary about repertoire, apart from the question of glitch and absence as we experience it, maybe still a system of so-called intermittence in has been a special category of unemployment benefit for artists, in which then there is social recognition of the value of maintaining or continuing practice, none of which, I should say, are appreciated in England, at least not by the Arts Council. I now also wonder what repertoire means in the age of the AI summary. Not simply, indeed, experiencing it now, with its profound impact on the understanding of repertoire. But in an age when reading, writing is no longer understood as a twofold two sides of a practice of research.
Mischa, I think we're not being very
And
successful.
in what indeed continue to offer instances of writing.
Mischa, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not being very successful at stable connection. We keep losing you.
Okay.
So
Okay.
there's a couple of things that we can do. One is if you're far away from your modem and you're on Wi-Fi, coming closer to the modem might help. If you are close to your modem and that's not the problem, then maybe exiting the meeting and rejoining might do the trick.
Okay. Well, basically I only had 3 more words to say.
Okay. Well,
so we can
would
leave
it be
it.
no, that's fine. But just because, I mean, at least I got the sense that the text that you wrote and you were reading is quite critical and important to the idea of the issue, and also I was enjoying it. Is that text are you able to share that text in the chat, and maybe we can also read it on our own later on?
I can type it up and send it to you afterwards for sure.
Yeah,
It's about
let's
a
do that, and then
paragraph.
we can share.
500
Yeah,
words or
let's.
something. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great. Okay.
fine. Great.
And sorry was bumping me, Mischa. You had the honor to be the first one, and so all the teething issues were laid upon you.
It's not unexpected, but not deliberate, I hasten to add.
Ooh, one forgot about this connectivity issue. Mischa, thank you so much. And I'm very sorry that the internet didn't work for us fully in this case. But yeah, it would be great if you could circulate your text with us later on. So let us now move to Falk, Hübner, and Danae Theodoridou. If I hope I pronounced it well.
It's okay.
I will start with Danae, who is a performance maker and a researcher. She investigates performance in relation to social imaginaries, and she teaches at the Fontys Academy of the Arts in the Netherlands. Falk Hübner is a professor of artistic connectivity practices. I think a very suitable topic at this moment. Also teaching at the Fontys Academy of the Arts in the Netherlands. He is a composer and theater maker, and his research focus is the relation between society and artistic research. Their issue on social imaginaries pushes forward this idea that art has and asks the question, what is the role that artistic practices can have in reshaping social imaginaries as ways of being and living together? And the screen is yours. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much also for the great introduction. So that's what this is about. We don't need to say more. You were very accurate, but we will expand a bit. So indeed, the issue is on social imaginaries. The term social imaginary points to the values, the ideas, and the symbols based on which a community creates its institutions and its laws in order to regulate its social coexistence. Cornelius Castoriadis has talked a lot about the term, and he talked about institutions such as religion, language, the regulation of power, and sexual relations as the arbitrary agreements that are made among the members of a society based on which these members create later whatever they understand as real. And a good example, I think, is probably the Benedict Anderson's Imagined Communities, the book, where nationalism and the idea of the nation itself is discussed as one very strong social imaginary. The nation, which is actually a very real notion and maybe the most graspable idea through which we understand the organization of human communities for the last many centuries, is actually an imaginary construction. That's what Anderson argues. For entirely arbitrary reasons, we have decided that we are Germans or we are Greeks or we are something else. But if the criteria and the imaginary values for this agreement would be different or would change, we would understand equally easily ourselves as something else. And we have seen that in the case of countries such as Yugoslavia, which in the last decades have changed their constellation, their identity, national identity. Now, as soon as we recognize this arbitrariness of the dominant social imaginaries as something that we have created, so it's not set in stone, then we immediately also realize that we are the ones that can do any dominant social imaginary that we find problematic and propose something different in its place. And the issue of performance research on social imaginaries asks exactly, as it was said, how art can contribute to the emergence of new social imaginaries that respond to main social and political crises and concerns of our time. And there are three characteristics of the social imaginary that make this question relevant for us, because these characteristics prove the strong relation of arts to the social imaginary. The first characteristic is that the social imaginary constitutes a practice. So in contrast to other terms that may have been used when thinking about social alternatives, such as, for example, utopia or fantasy, the social imaginary concerns what people actually do when they come together. And that's the first characteristic. The second characteristic is that this practice is primarily a bodily one, and because people come together physically in order to think together about the social coexistence. And this corporeal, sensorial aspect of our social coexistence is seriously neglected today in the way we understand politics and community building. And this fact, we argue, is responsible for many important crises that we face today, such as the crisis of democracy. And the third characteristic, last one, is that this bodily practice is experimental. As Castoriadis says, the Athenians in ancient Greek did not say, okay, let's come together to devise the most popular governance system in the world for the next many centuries, after first revising carefully all the previous governance systems. Instead, they came together on the basis of some common concerns and problems that they faced in society, and they experimented with ways to organize themselves differently as a people, and this is how they arrived to democracy, by trying out things without being able, of course, to predict the outcome that this endeavor would have in the next centuries. Now, from all these three characteristics, it becomes obvious, we think, that arts that experiment with bodily practices in their constructs can significantly contribute to the cultivation of other ways for coming together through cultivating artistic connectivity. And that's the second term that comes and is discussed in the issue. And Falk will speak a bit about that now.
Yeah, thank you, Danae. Hello, everyone. And also from my side, really a big thanks to Performance Research for all the support and also for the wonderful authors that contributed to the issue. So building off what Danae just said on the sense of coming together and the social imaginary as a practice, we also explored in the issue the concept of artistic connectivity, which is, as a concept very much linked to the social imaginary, and specifically concerning the processes, methods, and embedded values and ethics of connecting. So of making links, of being and doing together. And as connectivity as a term has been around for a little while. So it has been coined by pedagogue Martin John Hay, and in the roughly in the beginning of the century, in relation to education and sustainability mainly. And as a part of the work that we're doing in Tilburg with our research group with the same name, Artistic Connective Practices, we have developed this notion of connectivity towards artistic connectivity, which then draws on values such as reciprocity, spending time together, mutual respect, endless curiosity, affinity, integrity, and kinship, and similar related values. And for this issue of performance research, we were particularly interested in practices by artists and artist researchers who bring these values in practice in their work, or in whose work these values actually challenged, they come to the fore in whatever sense, become topics or questions. And then I will close with some last remarks on the structure of the issue.
Exactly, a little bit. Just to say that the open call of the issue received a very warm response that exceeded the 100 proposals, and I think this shows how relevant the term can be for discourses that focus on art's role today. The issue eventually hosts 17 texts from authors who discuss social imaginaries and artistic connectivity from within very diverse sociopolitical contexts that vary from different Western and Eastern European contexts to Turkey, Australia, Nigeria, Mexico, Brazil, and others. And we structured the issue around 3 parts. In the first part come texts that elaborate on the broader state of neoliberalism currently, and they critique the dominant social imaginary that this imposes. And then against this background, the next part of text, the next group of text is followed by a number of texts that focus on specific case studies, specific art projects that attempt to produce alternative social imaginaries. And then the last part of the issue zooms more into artistic connectivity and working modes from within arts and arts education. And then the issue closes with an editorial closing note that we call Connecting and Co-Imagining Spell, that we wrote together with Falk by collecting a list of questions as this emerged from all the text of the issue, which might be of help for art workers who think and work on social imaginaries and artistic connectivity. And at the very end, this note also leaves some blank space, some blank pages for the reader to add their own set of questions around these issues if they want to. And from my side as well, I would like to close by once more thanking warmly all the authors who contributed insightfully to the issue for their hard work, care, and patience during the editing process, which was also often very demanding. So thank you very much, everybody. I saw some of them here, which is great. Thank you.
Thank you, Falk. Thank you, Danae, very much. I would now like to ask Christel Stalpaert if you are ready. We were waiting a little bit for you. You were intended to be the first, but now you're in the middle, more or less. But I guess this is also a good time to hear something about activation and the idea of how artistic work and artistic heritage and specific forms of memories can be activated or reactivated, and what does it do to stay in line with this talk, social and political and aesthetic imaginaries. I will just present Christel very shortly. Christel is a senior full professor at the art department of Ghent University. She is also the director of PAM Research Center, and she has a research focus on performance and post-humanism. So I'm very happy that you are also here, and you can also start your presentation. And if you have any difficulties, then we will do it.
Okay.
Quickly.
First of all, my apologies for arriving later. I was going to present together with my co-editor, Eylül Fidan Akıncı, but there was an emergency and she couldn't join us. But I would like to stress that this thematic issue really was a joint effort of both of us, and that I really appreciate also all her knowledge and her expertise in weaving this issue together. Second, I also would like to thank the people from Performance Research for this opportunity, and also for this opportunity of having this presentation. Andre, I had a presentation that I sent to you. I don't know whether it can be uploaded while I start talking.
I have it on standby, Christel, so you just need to let me know when to change slide. Okay?
Okay, thank you. So
we were
then
prepared.
I start because I know time is precious. Okay, so we have, yes, that's the one. So the name of our thematic issue of performance research is on activation, and we deliberately did not use the term on action because we wanted to move away from this more anthropocenic notion of action, where you kind of have this heroic claim that humans possess the unique capacity to act, to change the world along a preconceived plan, or to create even a better world. So we want to move away from acting or action as a targeted action, as a human-bound action, an all-too-human notion. So we decided to use activation as a move beyond this binary hierarchical opposition, and we wanted to move within a meshwork constellation of this activation, where we had a call for paper that was looking for narratives and artistic practices of trying to move within this meshworked constellation of activation, narratives of sustenance, narratives of ongoingness, narratives of resurgence in a troubled world. Because when the call for papers was launched, it was just in the middle of COVID. So, you know, this process takes a long time. So this was also our aim, to look for appropriate repertoire, appropriate gestures of mutual care, of reciprocity in a world that was beginning anew. So in the beginning, we were very much inspired by Hannah Arendt and the human condition, where she really thinks of this new beginning. And when we were struggling with COVID, thinking about this new beginning, it seemed to us an apt question to ask ourselves how to begin anew, what when the doors of the theaters will open again. But then again, we were also immediately very much aware that this new beginning should not be considered as just starting anew, while that also might mean to cancel the past. So we were also very much inspired by Ariella Azoulay, who has a critical reading of Hannah Arendt's Human Condition, and also reveals the new and the focus on the new as an imperialistic trope. So we were kind of looking for narratives that were artistic practices that were in a way of also dealing with activating, reactivating a new beginning, but without erasing the past. So acknowledging sustained efforts across time that insist on undoing, unlearning imperialism, colonialism, racial and sexist capitalism, even cognitive capitalism, etc. So we also had a massive response. So there was a lot of editorial work to do. And in the thematic issue, the contributions present artistic practices that activate or reactivate beginnings of equity, without defaulting to the erasure of history. And that means, of course, and maybe we can go to the next slide, that also means to remember differently. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yes, so this is, we have a lot of contributions, and a first group of contributions help us to think, to remember differently. So if we go to the next slide, we have in this thematic issue narratives of this ongoingness, speculative gestures, and one of the first is by Shallon Weber-Hefferman, and she experienced herself how to remember differently while participating in the Community Remembrance Project in Alabama. And she deals with a way of remembering that moves away from monumental statues that has this heroic tradition of remembering one hero. And instead there is this soil collection project that acknowledges and commemorates racial terror of slavery. And what is particular is the site-specific and communal commemorative project that activates to remember history differently than through monumental statues. So during this project, soil is dug up collectively from former lynching grounds, and this soil collection gatherings are also performed through rituals in collaboration with communities across the country. If we go to the next slide, we see this resonates with another artistic practice of Beatrice Balcou's artwork, Containers, and this is a contribution by Léonie Persène. And she wondered during her encounter with muséophares, and these are the little insects that eat the artwork away, and they are a problem in heritage consultants. But she wonders, what does gazing at these heritage insects in bell jars mean in relation to habitual museum practices? So it's all about unlearning these museum practices, but listening to the insect itself. And rather than focusing on its destructive forces, it is actually what she calls a walking encyclopedia, because this insect has eaten all the knowledge from the past. If we go to the next slide, we see a third example of another commemorating practice, but it's a contribution by Alexandra Kokoli, and she traces another unlearning of habitual memorial practices in the commemorative and historic site of the Grehan Common Women's Peace Camp in Berkshire, England, where a Welsh group, Women for Life on Earth, marched to Grehan and stayed there to continue their protest. Now it has become an historic site for commemoration, and Kokoli, she refers to the artwork of Brown, Elspeth Owen, but also Anne Robinson, Nina Wakeford, to look for performance art and practices of walking to sidestep the pitfalls of sculptural monuments that are there for the preservation of one hero or one leader. So she also has a very interesting way of bringing forward durational performativity that unfolds as an ongoing event of what she calls then commemoration through walking. This walking appeared to be a very recurrent theme also. So another, if we go to the next slide, Nina Verdelja's artistic statement is a walking with swamp that she recounts as an artist's statement as this becoming non-anthropocentric. So a moving together of more than humans in this bonding together. And through this sensorial mapping of two walks in the Nordic Baltic wetlands, she also recounts her artistic practice. Then this also resonates with the next slide, with the collective. They have a kind of mapping that is similar to the Arpillera mapping, which is textile activism. And they do so to map their reflections between land and river, which is the result of their residency along the water on traditional Anishinaabe territory in Canada. And they also refer to collective writing practices, collective playwriting, and co-creation. This brings us to another artistic practice that was also very interesting, because when you talk about co-creation, it also means attuning to one another and each other's tempo. It's about delicate ecologies of co-creation, of interweaving, of entangling with reciprocal care. And this means slowing down to take the time to attune to one another. Jodie Ellenson, who herself worked out how to begin life again after a stroke, exploring ways of being with fatigue, etc. She really makes this slowing down a very central element of her art practice, but also how she collaborated with performances. But her own performance is a crash course in cloud spotting from 2021, and this really deals also with this performance. Then we also have, when we slow down, we can also activate our ancestors' aborted realities. We have a very wonderful contribution by Elizabeth Massana, who's talking about the performance work of Travis Alabanza, a leading voice in queer British theatre, carving space for trans and gender non-conforming people by reimagining pre-colonial gender non-conforming identities on stage. So beginning a new life without erasing that important heritage past. And then this is also similar to the interview that Eylül did together with Roberta da Soler and Jonas Rutgers on the work of choreographer and dancer Charis Menzo, because they also refer to the tradition of the Winti, and the Winti is the Sranan word for wind, frenzy, ghost, and spirit, which is also the ancestral heritage of a tabooed religious practice in Sranan, the Creole word for the language and the country of Suriname. And this is also present in the work of cherishment, so to reconnect to a past that has been erased. So this bonding presence and active absence of a past, so bringing it actively present again, is also present in another work by Carolina Bieszczat and Matthias Hau-Arbo, and they reimagine a conjoint choreographic script for the performance Limitless, featuring the biological body of an old Japanese Buto dancer with an industrial robot. So they're also examples of bonding together, and this is also the case in the last three, the final three contributions. One is, so we can go to the final slide there. They also deal with, okay, if we slow down, if we have this this beginning without erasing the past, we also need other modes of knowledge production than just a cognitive one. So it also has to do with activating wisdom, interest, and wonder. So Amit Parameswaran lingers on how in films you can, instead of just looking at the visuals and instead listening deeply to the rhythm and the sound score in films, he draws on Erika Fischer-Lichte's notion of interweaving cultures and how sound and the activating of deep listening of the spectator can reveal wisdom, interest, and wonder next to the images. And then Kasia Wojcik and Lily Kleimenhege, they talk about revisiting their own writings on Milorau, where they say, like, look, you have to reconsider your own writings if you're dealing with a project that also has its own ongoingness. And a final contribution is by Joachim Ben Jacob, where he invites us to attune to alternative modes of knowledge production. And he closes off the thematic issue by inviting us to do more schooling and to breathe out of the university, to have this pluriversity instead of a university. So our thematic issue was also interesting in activating, was also interesting in looking for artistic practices that were also activating not only other modes of remembering, not only other modes of slowing down and spending time together to attune to other rhythms, to listen deeply, but also to have other modes of knowledge production. And indeed, as a conclusion, I would like to say that we were really much surprised that we ourselves realized, why should the university infrastructure be the only valid knowledge institution? We have all these examples in this thematic issue that affirm that art, that performance, that theater space are very particular fruitful zones for activating alternative modes of knowledge production, for unlearning imperialism, for rehearsing co-citizenship with more than human beings, and also for weaving and knotting stories together instead of just building an argument. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christel, for this very elaborate presentation. For the sake of time, I will now jump to my dear colleague, Helena Grehan. And I will just shortly introduce her by, although I don't think you, Helena, really need an introduction, but I will say just that you are a professor of creative arts at the Murdoch University in Australia, that you write about performance, ethics, art, and politics, together with questions of spectatorships and responsibility. and that you are now and that you will be the chief editor of performance research very soon. Helena was the co-editor of this issue on Extremis, which put the focus on extreme situations, but I also like how you framed it, that it is not about endings, but it is about edges. So in that sense, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Andre, and thank you to everyone who's presented so far. Can everybody hear me? Yeah? Just one small thing. I'm not at Murdoch University anymore. I'm at Edith Cowan University, just in case my Edith Cowan colleagues are listening and wonder what's going on. So I suppose I approach this a little differently to Mischa and Christel, and to Falk and Danae. I'm sorry if I'm murdering your name. I just thought I would sort of talk about why we got to the issue and why we thought it was important a little bit. My last issue that I edited with Miriam Houghton was called On Invasion, and that was sort of inspired by the Ukrainian situation when it first occurred and my sense of devastation about the world. And obviously since then things have gone downhill quite a bit on many fronts. So I wanted to do an issue to try and think through and feel through this idea of extremes, end times, edges, borders, boundaries, confrontational moments, because I felt that if I was able to bring an issue together through that, we might be able to find ways of understanding, ways of responding to, ways of escaping from, ways of rethinking this situation that we find ourselves in the world today. I think that, we would all agree that we find great hope in the creative arts in giving us alternative ways of looking at, feeling for, and thinking about current situations, past situations, and potential future situations. So that was my desire. And at the time, I was working with my esteemed colleague, Charles Green, on another project on extremes, and that was a project about extreme weather. And I had just met him, and we'd been working together collaboratively for a couple of years. And I thought, who would I like to co-edit this with? And I thought I would love to co-edit this with Charles Green. Charles is a professor of visual arts, but not only that, he is also an amazing artist himself, along with his partner, Lyndall Brown. They work collaboratively and they make large-scale paintings, as you can see on the cover of In Extremis. That's one of their works. They were Australian war artists in Afghanistan and in Iraq. So they're very senior artists, and they make work that is really incredibly profound and provocative. So I was delighted that he agreed to work with me, and I think that together we managed to push each other further in our thinking about extremism and extremes and edges. And also that we were able to work collaboratively and really closely on selecting the contributions for the issue. Like all the other issues, we did receive a huge amount of submissions, and it was a really difficult decision on what to include, because most of them were really, really good. So in the end, we tried to think in a kind of curatorial way about how the issue might flow and ensure that we had both a range of ideas about the extreme or extremism or extremists, and a range of modes of speaking and showing. And I think that if you have a chance to hold the physical copy in your hand, you can see that has been realized beautifully by our fantastic designer Helena, with the help of Helen, the boss, and the other Helen Pendry, who works on the journal too. So I was really comforted, I guess, by the issue and by the range of approaches to this topic that people came up with. And I did think that in this presentation I would outline each essay line by line, but I was worried that I might actually not do justice to the depth and complexity of them if I tried to do that. So I'm not going to list each one, although I would say that Christel did an amazing job in her going through them. But I will say that the contributions were profound and wide-ranging, and they covered all sorts of things from analyses of performance works, much bigger meta considerations of the philosophical, political, social, and cultural issues around limits, borders, and edges, and also very kind of micro-focused, detailed, zoomed in, if you like, portraits of the experience of being at edges and in extremes by artists and academics in various contexts. So it covered a wide range of forms and styles and genres and modes of thinking. And I couldn't be happier with the actual finished work. I think it is a beautifully curated capsule for thinking and feeling through extremes. And I am very grateful to everybody for their wonderful work and for bearing with us as we edited and we sent things back and forward, and for just giving their work to us. So thank you very much, everybody.
Wow. Thank you very much. I think this was a beautiful introduction also to our discussion, which we now could have. The question is whether there are any urgent questions right away, where you think, okay, this now has to be put out. You can either write it down in the comments, or you can just turn off your camera if it is switched off and just pose it on the screen. Okay. If this is the case, then if you allow me to, when I was going through these issues, and now especially listening to your presentations, what caught my attention was this idea or this question: what do you think in relation to the issues that you have presented? What is the urgency for us in the field of performance research and artistic research as such? What would you say is the thing that we have to address, talk about, discuss, criticize, put public, or in any way deal with?
I think, Christel, you go.
No, you go first. You go.
I was just going to say, I think there's so many things there's so many competing things that we feel are urgent and need our attention, as is the case in extremism, that it's that the problem is that we can become stymied and become stuck because we're not sure which one to prioritize, and or how do we get them out there amid all the noise of all the competing claims for attention and the needs for consideration. So maybe our problem or our issue is how to sift through the competing urgencies and to find a way to reach readers, audiences, and publics, maybe.
Yes, I would like to connect with that because, yeah, we don't need to repeat, but at the same time, we cannot repeat enough that these are really troubling times on political, environmental, social level. And like what you say, Helen, is indeed the case, because we have this discourse of anger, of competition, of polarization, of putting up each other against one another. And I don't think we have to be seduced by that. And I think this was a call for the on activation issue. It was a call that was launched around COVID, when we were hesitantly moving out of our houses again. The solidarity that I sensed a bit then, it seems to be gone at the moment, because I mean, I can become very afraid when I listen to the news, when I listen to the discourse of leaders at the moment that are supposed to give a good example. But what I learned from rereading the articles here is that what art can do is, one, it can give hope, in the sense that it gives a way for ongoingness, for believing in resurgence. And despite all the budget cuts that are now haunting also in the Netherlands, in Belgium, budget cuts that are in the first case also haunting the arts, I think what all these examples learn us is that it is exactly the arts that allow us to slow down, to attune, to listen, and to hyphenate with each other and to connect. So I do think that, yeah, it learns us that without the arts and without these modes of knowledge production, yeah, there would be no hope, for me at least. So, yeah.
I agree. I think that it's about maybe it's about, on one level, the resistance to the kind of atomization of our societies, and the increase in hate and anxiety, I guess, and an attempt to see that the creative space can give us that hope that you mentioned, can perhaps unite us in a way through our differences that allows us to think collectively. I mean, that would be lovely, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. Talking about, you mentioned collectivity. I think this is also something that more or less all four issues have been dealing, although not focusing on this specific notion. But when, for instance, Christel, you are mentioning this other or new models of knowledge production, or for instance, Helena, when you are bringing up this idea of a multiple crisis that are actually creating then this extreme, or this multiplication also of extreme situations, be it political questions, be it ideological antagonisms, be the rise of right-wing politics, be the climate crisis, gender troubles. I was wondering, but then also coming back to Falk and Danae, what would you say is this idea of collectivity something that we have to get back to, in a sense of that we have to really reinvent or rethink the ways we are together, and this being together, being in togetherness, is it maybe some direction that also needs to be addressed, and is it also some possible trajectory of hope as well?
Yeah, I can. Danae, is it okay if I start? I think first of all, I can connect very much to the discussion we just had with one conversation Danae and had while writing the editorial, which was about, actually, I think Danae asked me, are you actually more pessimistic towards the future, or more optimistic or hopeful? And this, I mean, although obviously it sparks a discussion on two extremes, it sparked quite some fruitful thoughts. I mean, I'm personally more on the hopeful side to that, also very much connected to what Rebecca Solnit has written on hope. But I guess the idea on collectivity and being together and doing and making together very much connects to that. And what I personally think is that it depends a lot on with which kind of values and ways of doing actually we connect this togetherness. I think in our conversations, Danae also mentioned several times a kind of neoliberal understanding of being together and connecting, such as networking, and which is mostly for growth and profit, to put it very shortly, which is actually not what we're looking for. So with which kinds of values and ethics do we fuel the way of being together? I mean, with artistic connectivity, we make one attempt to actually fill this with terms and with ideas, and I guess that's only one, because a number of the examples in the issue also showed examples of how that's actually possible to do or to approach that. And I'm also wondering if some of the authors who are here actually respond to that, because they have, of course, written and made the contributions.
Hello, authors.
Hello, authors. We miss your voice, sis.
Hello. Should I should I offer? Hi, I'm Rob Eagle. I wrote an artist page in this issue, and I think, you know, my focus, particularly coming from a space right now which is really at the forefront in the north of England of a sort of regeneration discourse, that arts are really being highly instrumentalized. So there's a lot of hope being put on art in activating spaces and in bringing people together. And it's almost there's a lot of pressure on the artists, essentially, to overcome much deeper rifts in society and much bigger problems that we're facing, from lack of investment, lack of support from central government, from local government, and on all sorts of levels, that actually there's almost too much responsibility, I would say, on the artist. And sometimes it's almost kind of like we're looking to artists as the great hope. And so I think for me, I'm almost kind of going the opposite way, which is to be more more honest with myself, that there's only so much I can do as a singular artist, and that I can offer maybe a small glimpse of hope that is bringing people together, that you know, for me, is a hopeful outlook on the world, but that I don't think that art can necessarily save us alone. That art, the what is the role of art in society, is actually a much they're much bigger forces working against us. So yeah, it doesn't mean that I'm hopeless as an artist, but I think certainly within my artist page, and thank you very much to the editors for really kind of helping me to think through, I think, my practice and kind of the reflections. I think it was a really fruitful, generative process of writing, that's really helped me to reflect on this, and it's really lasted with me even after the writing of my current practice and my current research, of really reflecting the community that I'm in, and what can my work do? What can I do as a singular person within my community? What is the role of art? And I think, if anything, rather than saying, "Oh, it can save us all," it's actually just thinking I can offer one small thing within my community, and actually the rest of that is yeah, much bigger forces in the world. So if that's a kind of a bit of a summary of my article.
Can I add something to that? Thank you, Rob, for this very interesting intervention as an artist, and I agree completely. I don't think that we can make the artist responsible for changing the world. I think this is really too much on the shoulders of artists. And I think what is also in our thematic issue, a running thread in the weaving of these articles together, is this concept of Donna Haraway of art, science, activist worlding, where you have activism, where you have art where you have science, and art studies is also a science. Remember, this is not only about biology or engineering. This is also about these things. And in the introduction, I've also written is that it's sometimes Donna Haraway uses hyphens to use this term, and sometimes she doesn't. But I'm convinced that the hyphens are the most important part there. It's the hyphenating between these elements. It's the really taking responsibility from every field of knowledge production or art production or praxis, from the capacities that you have as an individual moving in that field. And it's only through this ongoingness together from these hyphens that we will manage to move in our bumptious kind, in the sense that, like, creating this kind of ongoingness. I'm not talking about rescuing, or I'm not talking about saving. I'm talking about ongoingness. Even to be able to move forward, it has to be something in these hyphens. So thank you, Rob, for bringing this up. Of course, not putting the responsibility on one shoulder. That's, I think, insane.
I agree. Couldn't agree more. And you're right. We can't expect art to save the world, but we certainly can hope, I think, that it does do something, because we keep doing it. We must believe.
If I can also comment, there are also a couple of questions or thoughts in the chat. And for me, all of them, as well as many of the things that have been heard until now, come together, meet on the question of the practice, the how. And I think art, and maybe it's important to also make clear that we don't talk about art, we don't fetishize art, because we can also have art that goes art is also part of the machinery, art is also part of the market. But because of the way it works, it can have some frames that really ask how and work with this how. It's about the small detail. We have time. We are in an event, we have a space, and we have a time. How do we respect that for each other, for ourselves, for others? Some people here talk about co-authorship. We faced, at least in our issue, a couple of maybe more proposals for co-authorship that we had to discuss among us, because they were, for example, proposals for co-authorship where an author would submit a proposal and then they say, can I also add my supervisor? Can I also add 3 more? You said that STEAM has huge, and we said no. No, you cannot, because you will write a text that you will credit someone else. So it's not so easy to say co-authorship, okay, great. It's really about going into the complexity and really see how things are done there. The same goes with how can we use language as academics. It's not about language in general, it's about how we use it. We can experiment with other ways of working with language, with our students, with other artists, with our collaborators, and that's where that's what I try to do also through my practice. But I think the challenge is questioning how, on all levels, and experimenting with other ways of doing it than the ways that we consider problematic. And I was thinking that maybe it makes sense to share this final closing note with the questions that I mentioned that come from all the texts of the issue, because this may give a direction towards how was questioned in the issue. I stop here. Thank you.
Excellent points. Thank you. I guess it's about how it brings us back to the question of deep listening or slow listening, or taking the time and the care that is required to actually unpack, and not necessarily to understand, because we don't always understand, but at least to ask questions about what we don't know and what we can't immediately understand.
I think, to me, it's also a matter of resources. I mean, some of you might know, but I've been quite involved with collaborative academia and collaborative authorship for a decade now. And I'm very proud to say that that I'm part of a group that has sustained a practice of writing together for that period of time, for that long. And sometimes, I sometimes I play with a name or a term that would describe our practice the best. And sometimes I play with the idea of some sort of like, is this some kind of cosmopolitanism on the grounds that we're all around the world, and we sustain that practice precisely because we're able to connect with using technologies like Zoom, etc. But recently I've been thinking much more about academic socialism, in the sense that it seems to me that there's a lot of need to distribute resources. A few weeks ago, I had a conversation with colleagues at UCLA, and it occurred to me to say that what was at stake is no longer to train more brilliant PhDs, but to train people that are able to generate employment for others. And I think that that's quite important right now, that as academics, maybe there's an opportunity to shift our attention less on production and more on sustenance and employability, right? Like we lose track of the pragmatics of creating employment for others using the security of positions that we might have or might aspire. So, I think in terms of practice, there's an idea there that I keep playing and coming back to in terms of collaborative practice and co-authorship, that in the end is about the resources. It's about being or enforcing the positions that some of us have so that we can generate projects, so that we can generate opportunities to continue being co-authorships with other people, and in doing so employ them, right? That sense of redistribution of resources from wealthy institutions to less wealthy individuals. I think to me that's quite important right now.
I think, Felipe, that you bring up a very important point. And I think this is exactly what I meant with from the capacities you have. I mean, some of us are artists that write a contribution, and they have a completely different way of moving in the world than a professor like me, who has a fixed position and actually has a privileged position at the university. And I think that we also need to think through our capacities of changing things when we collaborate with artists, with other people from other situations. And there was this research project that is still running, in which we work with people who have no documents. And the most important struggle that I'm proud of, it's not an article that we published in Valise. It is that we are now sitting together with the chancellor of the university to see how we can change the financial policy for being able to pay undocumented people, because we consider them as experts, and an expert needs to be paid. And this is exactly what you say. It doesn't stop with co-authorship. I mean, it's easy to put your name next to someone else. It really is also about redistributing funding, and really to make sure that anyone who is involved in a project is being paid for labor that is being done. So thank you very much for bringing this up.
Looks like we have run out of steam.
Imagine.
Imagine.
Or
I
we just,
suppose,
or
sorry,
we just desire a bit of silence.
maybe, but I just want
Maybe.
to say, this is a very heavy discussion, but it's a very important one. But I think that one of the things to remember from this conversation is that we are a collective as a discipline. And I think that we have a lot of interconnections across the world, as Felipe mentioned. And I think we need to probably mobilize them more and more, maybe more effectively. We need to think about, if we're talking about the importance of care, of ethics, of funding, of community. We need to maybe mobilize our own community and model what that's like for others in order to begin the changes that we would really like to see. And we are already doing it. I'm not trying to suggest that we're not, but maybe we need to do it more. And maybe events like this, as small as it is, like a drop in the ocean, is a moment where we can come together and share material and ideas and have a chat and put up thoughts and ideas, and then, you know, think about what happens next. So I think this is an important, tiny little contribution to what it is that we seek to achieve.
Yes. Yes. Very good idea. Because I just realized that this also gives energy, this gives hope. When you're struggling alone behind your computer, no, this gives hope. And, you know, in the word care, it's etymologically, it's also very close to carrying, care, carrying. So we are a collective. It's very nicely put, Helen. We are a collective. We carry each other. Let's, yes.
Yeah, and as you say, for those of us who are lucky enough to be in senior positions, I think we have an extra responsibility to really, you know, invest in that role of sharing and caring and uplifting, especially in these times.
Any comments? Any questions? Any observations?
I would like to thank
so many hearts in a meeting.
I would like to thank you, Andre, for your organization of this, your fantastic management of this, and also on a personal note, for the fact that you pronounce my name correctly, which is incredibly rare. So thanks.
Thank you. Well, to be honest with you, I was a little bit scared because, first of all, I was a bit unsure whether we have managed to communicate in real time. You know, the UTC, the Central European Time. So it kind of, but at the same time, it showed me and proved me that there are so many things, like basic things that we kind of think they're we take them for granted, but in the end, nothing is there to be taken for granted. An old philosophical lesson that, you know, I thought I learned it during my study times, but then I was reminded that, you know, temporality really is a very important issue.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. Can I just also, just one thing that we've forgotten to mention today, and I think it's really important, is that I'd like to put a shout out to our fantastic reviews editor, Lapid, for all of his work on the reviews section of each of the issues that we have been talking about. He works really hard. He gets really good material. He approaches really good reviewers, and we get a very nice, comprehensive set of reviews in each issue. And, you know, we're very grateful to him for his dedication and hard work on that area.
Maybe if I can say just a small comment at the end, because of the social imaginaries interest, that for me it was strikingly inspiring, what you said, Helena, that we are a community. The first thing I said to Falk before the meeting was that it's so nice that we're here from all over the world. And some people said, sorry, I have dinner, which is like weird for us here in the morning. And then when you said we are a community, I thought, oh, that's so nice to think of us as a community all over the world, because I have to say that lately I very rarely do that. I don't feel that we are a community. And when I do through these conferences, the community doesn't look very nice. So it's a bit something goes, but so for me, the social imaginary of trying to reimagine what this means, to rethink of us as a real community practically, And I don't want to give this burden out to performance research, but it's something that I would be very interested to, to think further. How can we actually feel that we, the community that we are? I just wanted to say that.
I think it's a good challenge for all of us to think about how we, do more than just talk the talk. What are we going to do? So yeah, let's, we have a meeting of the associate editors tomorrow, and we might put that into the agenda and see what kind of practical things we can actually do to mobilize our community and make our community feel, held and cared for.
Oh, I think these are amazing closing words.
Excellent.
A community that cares for the others. I mean, that's really,
I'm getting goosebumps.
yes. Together with this Felipe's idea, academic socialism.
I'm not sure I have to I just realized I'm on record saying that, and I do live in the US, so oops.
Hope you get back in.
I know, right?
Maybe you should not put it up until after you're back.
Right,
Yes.
right. Well, I guess we can begin to bid farewell. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Andrea, again for hosting the session and for organizing it. Thank you.
It was a
Danae. Thank you,
pleasure and
Helena.
honor.
And Felipe for keeping us all on time, in the right time, and for recording and putting things up and doing all the technological things that he does.
I just press play, don't worry.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Helen.
Bye
Take
bye.
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye.
you. See you.
Bye.